Welcome to episode 193 of the Ski Podcast, and thanks for joining us, listener. My name is Iain Martin, and today we have a special episode for you. Regular listeners may have heard my interviews with Tony McWilliam, founder of Faction Skis, and Jim Adlington, founder of Planks. This is another one of those founder interviews, this time with Jamie Grant, the man who invented and started another great British success, the Carv, also known as the digital ski coach. Regular listeners will know I have a Carv. I reviewed it in episode 171. And I think I'm up to date, the latest numbers, that there are over 20,000 members across 58 countries who altogether recorded over 150 million turns. Jamie, welcome to the podcast. How are you?
Yeah, very, very good. Thank you. And thanks so much for having me and being a Carv customer.
It's a pleasure. Whereabouts are you today?
Currently sitting in our office in London, just on the south bank of the Thames. So yeah, we have a view of the Thames just out the side here.
Do you? Lovely. Excellent. So no snow, but that's still a pretty good view to have. I guess in terms of the Carv itself, we're going to go in and explain in a lot more detail what it does. But I said it's the digital ski coach. So we'll run with that for now. It's certainly an innovator as far as anything I've seen within skiing. And I'd like to discuss, if it's okay with you, what prompted you to start it, how it came about, the journey before we go into specifically what it is. So kind of interesting that you're in London now looking over the Thames, because I think the whole project started while you were involved in academia at Imperial College. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. So just to kind of start high level, really the purpose of Carv is to get you better at skiing. And to do that in a really so that you can have more fun. So to get you better at skiing so that you can have more fun. And thinking back to when I started, even sort of thinking about Carv was really when I learned skiing quite late when I was 18, and I was really struggling to get better. And I had some great lessons for about a week or two, but it just didn't really fit to have lessons at that age, given all the complexity of finding a coach every time I was skiing. And so I'd have lessons occasionally, but I was always thinking to myself, I wish I could have something to help me understand how I'm improving. So, I might see a video of myself and think, oh, like I can see I'm not skiing very well here. But I only see that after the fact. And so really the principle of Carv was, if we can give the right information to you at the right point of time and create a really fun way of getting better, we can actually really improve your skiing, and you can have loads of more fun whilst you're skiing in the process. And so that's the kind of fundamental thread that was running through the principle of the company. And I started thinking about it when I was at university. I was at Imperial College studying for a PhD in financial economics, and I was spending a lot of time looking at data for my PhD. And I sort of thought to myself, I've got all these there are all these clever methods to analyze data. We've got machine learning, new methods of machine learning coming out, essentially analyzing graphs and trying to work out what's good and bad in an economic sense. And so I thought, wouldn't it be incredible? And if I could actually take all that knowledge and skill and apply that to the sport of skiing to create this fun product.
It's kind of amazing, perhaps, that no one had really thought about that before. I mean, a couple of thoughts that have come through my mind while you've been saying that is, firstly, maybe I should have addressed you as Dr. Jamie Grant, assuming the PhD finished. I guess it did. And secondly, you talk about machine learning. Is that not what people, right now would be calling AI? Are you just like really early on into that AI trend?
Yeah, I think, it's all part of the same thing. I think traditionally it's been called machine learning, and then as it's got more and more intelligent, we now start to even call it artificial intelligence, because it feels like the gap to actually creating a human-like or experience is getting closer. But fundamentally what we're trying to do is take large data sets and turn that into, first of all, an understanding of your skiing, so how well you're skiing, and then trying to think about what is the next best thing for you to work on to improve, and then to keep giving you feedback on that. It's a bit semantics. It's whether you call AI or machine learning, and we certainly use a bit of both.
Yeah, and so you're saying like you started, relatively late, and I think I understand what you're saying there about you felt you were stuck on the plateau. A lot of people, end up on this plateau. And it's quite hard to get off it unless you do take, a lot of instruction, because What you were saying to me is that you found it frustrating is that there weren't many ways to be able to, I don't know, check your ability level or improve your ability level outside of taking lessons.
It was really that feedback loop, really what I was trying to do is trying to create a feedback loop, and I try and copy friends and, try and mimic what they were doing. I found that effective, or just try and copy a good skier. And then sometimes I'd ask my friends to video me, and I kind of look at myself and I'd watch videos. But aside from when I, could actually have a coach with me, which was very rare at that stage, there was no actual real kind of reliable feedback. Maybe, only my own feedback of trying to assess what to do better. And feedback from friends who obviously weren't very qualified.
Yeah, I mean, I don't have it in my notes here, but I'm pretty sure I read somewhere or I heard somewhere that 90% of skiers, once they've kind of done the beginner phase, then they just don't ever take lessons again. Is that right?
Yeah, so 8% of skiers will get a lesson in the whole year of skiing, at least one lesson. And if you cut that just for people that are past the beginners, you're probably looking at sort of 96% of skiers that won't have a lesson. And it's funny you mentioned that, because that's really where we see where Carv can add so much value. Of that 96% of people, a lot of them still want to improve their skiing, but they're not getting lessons. And so for us to kind of come in and actually help them get more value out of skiing is awesome. And we even find that people use Carv to understand certain parts of their skiing, and then they actually work with the instructor to kind of really accelerate a certain part of the Carv metrics. And we actually have instructors we partner with that are actually using Carv as a teaching tool.
I might as well mention now that regular listeners will have heard David Lindsay from ESF Masterclasses in Maribel. He was talking in episode 190. They're putting on these masterclasses and they're going to use the Carv, incorporate it into those lessons. But I wondered if I could just take you back a little bit then, Jamie. I mean, it's fine saying, I was thinking about how I could apply financial data to skiing and all these different data points, etc. And you're starting the journey, I think, in around 2015 when you're at Imperial. Presumably you weren't doing all of this on your own. How did you build up a team around you in those early stages?
I Carvo so much to basically my co-founder, who I had a technical background in terms of data, but my coding skills are actually delivering an app and all the details of actually getting a complicated product, a very complicated product to market, were definitely beyond my skill set. I didn't do engineering. I did physics and statistics, and so I was very lucky to meet my co-founder. And I basically we had a arrangement with the Varsity trip to make a ski app, and the ski app would basically measure technique. And that app used the motion sensors, and I developed algorithms just use the phone sensors. And we'd agreed the trip, and I paid, but I didn't have anyone to make it, so to make the app. And so I advertised around Imperial with a poster, basically saying, do you want to build the next thing in ski technology? And very, very, very luckily found my co-founder replied, amongst some other people. And then as we started working together, we formed a very good working relationship where I could help with the data side and the thinking about the product and the skiing, and then he would actually be able to make the app.
That is brilliant. I love it that you did it that way around. You got the deal first to provide something for Varsity, and then worked out how you were going to make it. Do you still have a copy of that original poster asking for a program?
I have a scan of it. Yeah. So I used to have a scan of the poster, and I think Pruth, my co-founder, actually has the physical poster somewhere. So yeah.
Well, I'd love to see a copy of that. So your initial testing ground then was with the Varsity. It's the Oxford Cambridge ski trip. Where they all went out on one trip, and you basically gathered a lot of data from that initially. Were they good at using the app?
Yeah, so we had a few ski trips that use the product, and we probably had a few thousand people, including the Oxford Cambridge trip, use that app itself. And we had a very lot of excitement with the app, and we had people competing for these skill points. But what we actually realized was, although people were excited about the app itself, we weren't really giving enough details about people's technique. We weren't really understanding how they were skiing, and we weren't able to provide meaningful feedback. And so that's actually when we had this realization that although we had a really kind of interesting kind of few thousand users for that basic product, it wasn't really our mission of actually helping people improve skiing. It was fun. You can kind of like get points a bit for technique, but it wasn't really getting to the heart of making you a better skier. And so that's, and helping you get more from the sport in of itself, not just because it's fun to compete with friends.
Right, exactly. So with this,
Yeah.
it was just on the phone, nothing to do
Yes,
with an
exactly.
insole
Yeah.
or anything like that. And that's where the real technology comes in, because the phone in itself, as you're saying, it doesn't give you that feedback. It's the wrong part of the body, isn't it? If we think about skiing, everything to do with how well we control our skis is coming through our feet and how everything connects there. That was the next stage. And so is this where you got involved with an incubator scheme in China? Is that how that
Yes.
works?
Yeah. So at that point, we started to make prototypes for hardware products, and we were testing at Brentwood. So we have some great videos of me skiing at Brentwood, Profeet is filming, and I'm kind of doing good and bad skiing. And you can see at that point, because we have sensors in the boots, and you can see how the boots are basically moving in relation to my skiing. And we identify good and, well, at that case, it was just sort of snowplow and straight skis. Obviously, now it's a lot more advanced. And that formed part of our pitch to an incubator saying, hey, we've got this initial product. We see a really good market. We've actually demonstrated that there's an interest for this because we had the Varsity trip, but we needed the incubator to turn that kind of hardware product idea into a mass market product. So essentially, yeah, they first invested in 2015. We went to China, spent about a year on and off in China to essentially make the products. And you have these incredible places these markets where you can just go and get components and start prototyping. So we were kind of sitting in China prototyping our products. And then once we got to a product we were happy with, we could then speak to factories as well, and still work with some of those factories that we initially met.
That must have been amazing, living in China and experiencing the white heat of technology. You're actually really seeing it there. Saying you're actually getting prototypes made up on the spot.
Yeah, so it was incredible. So at that stage, we had another team member join, Bo, who's based in Singapore, but we actually met in Imperial, and he did an incredible job. He basically took our idea of these hardware products that we made with Arduino, so kind of very kind of hacky ways of demonstrating a concept, and he made that into prototypes that we could actually properly ski with. And I think we probably had about 50 prototypes that we put together in China, and then we could start testing with sports teams.
And with those ski teams, I believe Snow Sports GB or GB Snow Sport got involved. So Dave Ryding was one of those people who was testing that initial prototype.
Yeah, exactly. So we kind of really appreciate Dave helping us out right at the beginning. And we started working on this new product, and obviously we're both British, and there's not many British people in the ski industry when you think about it globally. And so we went out to Hintertux, Austria, and ski with him and his trainer, and tried to understand. We had this system where we could see how we skied, and we thought, let's get someone awesome and see how they ski, and look at that difference, and then start to think about what is actually happening in the data, and then we can start building essentially an analysis around that to try and understand what's good and what's bad skiing, and really that's the same thing we do now, but in a much deeper and more complex fashion.
And was that a sort of transactional thing? Is Dave looking at this when he's giving up his time to help you to think, well, how can I improve my skiing? Is he looking for that extra 1% to lift him up to the next level?
Yeah, I think at that stage, it was known that the US team had these very, I think they spend millions a year on the most advanced systems. And really what we were saying is that we want to bring those same systems to the average skier, and even the higher performance skier, but who perhaps hasn't got access to millions of dollars of funding in Dave's case. And I think that's what was interesting, because we know in the market there are people using these very advanced systems, but they're not made in a practical or a cost-efficient way for an average skier, or even an advanced racer like Dave.
And so you're saying that US team might have this type of technology, but it's not available, or at the time it wasn't available on the market for the public to buy?
Yeah, so people basically have done very controlled tests where they get all these sensors on a skier and they will watch how they ski down. And they've come up with a lot of research, which is really useful. We was to look at as well. But no one's essentially taken that very advanced academic research in very isolated, narrow controlled conditions and taken it into something meaningful that someone can use every day. And so that's what we tried to do. We weren't the first people to put sensors in boots. We weren't the first people to think about measuring skiing. But what we tried to do was take that and make it useful for average to advanced skiers, rather than just the academics.
So this all happened over a fairly quick period of time, but I'm thinking what made the biggest difference at this point to move on to the next stage was the Kickstarter campaign. You ran that in 2016. I looked up a few numbers on it. I think you were trying to raise $50,000. Went a long way over target with that, right?
Yeah, it was incredible. So at the time, so skiing is a smaller industry than running. Many people run, and not so many people ski. And so at the time, the biggest sports Kickstarter was a running product that I think had made about $250,000. So we thought, look, skiing is a lot smaller than running, and it's that's obviously much bigger than us. And so we thought, okay, well, given the market isn't as big, we should, it makes sense to sort of think about how we can run the business around raising $50,000. And yeah, I think we raised $50,000 in the first 2 days. And I think what happened was the product really resonated with the market. So I think, people shared this sort of similar perception I had that, oh, wouldn't it be great if you had something to guide you as you were skiing every day in your everyday skiing to be better and to do that in a fun way. And obviously that's what we pitched on Kickstarter. And I think it kind of shows that how well the product fits with, the demand of the market, that even though we have a much smaller market, we actually beat all of the other sports products that existed at the time. We actually beat them in terms of Kickstarter.
That is amazing. And obviously, I guess at that stage, already it progressed very well. But in terms of turning into a viable business that can work, once you had that funding there, it kind of put you on the road. Absolutely. And I think I'm right in saying now that, the scale of the business has, multiplied many times since then. I think I again looked it up and I think recently confirmed the total funding overall is over $10 million now. Is that right?
Yeah, so we've been very lucky to have some great investors who've backed our mission.
Cool. And how many staff are you employing?
So we're 25 full time, and then we hire about 10 seasonal staff to help us with the winter demand.
Great. Well, it evidently is a British success story. And I saw that in 2021, you're actually given a Queen's Award for Enterprise for International Trade. That's allocated to British companies that have shown outstanding achievement in trade and innovation. So congratulations on that as well. I thought maybe at this point, it would be good to go into the product in a little bit more detail. We said it's a digital ski coach, and you talked about how the idea is to make ski coaching, more enjoyable. And I guess it's to do with making it accessible as well through the gamification side of things. But you mentioned you started off with the app, then you moved on to hardware. So the hardware is where all of that data is gathered, isn't it? Do you want us to explain what the hardware is and what's in it?
Yeah, exactly. So really, it's always good to remember. So the objective of Carv is to make skiing really fun and to measure the quality of your skiing. And so with that objective, we started thinking, okay, how are we going to measure and where's the best place to measure that? And we obviously looked at different points of the body, but we thought if you can fix on the feet, then you can see both how the skis are moving, which obviously has a huge impact on how you're skiing. It's kind of the result of the rest of the body. And then whilst we're at the feet, we can also measure the pressure under the foot as well. So that's when we came up with the idea of having a pressure and a motion sensor for each foot. And so what that means is you have a full directional motion. So you have the basically where the skis are pointing, and you have the acceleration. So that's a combination of three sensors. So you have accelerometer, a gyroscope, which is the speed of rotation, and then a magnetometer, which kind of works out which direction the skis are pointing. And then that data is all collected together and turned into this ski direction. And then we also have pressure data. So you have 36 pressure sensors. And what they're doing is they're understanding how you're standing on the foot, how you're actually moving forward and backwards during the turn, which is very important. So we look at that point of balance as you move through and out the turn, and we can see that great skiers move forward at certain points of the turn and essentially release the pressure as they go towards the end of the turn. And then we can also look at the relative pressure between the skis, so how much outside pressure you're putting versus inside pressure. So that really was the basis of the hardware, having a very accurate motion and pressure sensor and combining that together to get an accurate picture of how you're skiing.
I love that. So just to clarify then, for the benefit of the listener, it's easier for me because I have this already, but it's a thin insole, has sensors attached to it, attached to a tracker that's connected, that clips onto the top of your boots where the battery lies as well. And that's connected by Bluetooth to your phone. You've got this I can't even say it, magnetometer, is that it?
Magnetometer.
That one. Accelerometer, pressure sensors, gyroscope, and that's delivering information the whole time, multiple times per second. Is that right?
Yeah. So just to kind of take it from the top. So the whole unit itself. So you take out the liner of the ski boot. You put this thin layer underneath your, basically on your shell, and then you put the interior of the ski boot back, and then you have what we call a small tracker on the top, which is basically a battery and a transmitter. And in that layer, you actually have the motion sensor and the pressure sensor. So you know exactly where the skis are pointing, and you have the pressure sensor. And the motion sensor is a combination of magnetometer, gyroscope, and accelerometer.
Again, for the benefit of the listener thinking about this, I mean, if you have your own ski boots already, you can have them fitted into your ski boot. There we go, underneath your footbed. I would probably recommend, if you're thinking about getting new boots and thinking about getting a Carv, that you do both at the same time. I went to Profeet, and listen to my experience of this in episode 161. But their experience in fitting custom insoles and a Carv at the same time, so they can put them both in. Because how thick is the insole? Is the insole, the Carv insole?
Yeah, so maximum is about 3 millimeters, and then over most of it's about 2 millimeters.
Yeah, so 2 to 3 millimeters in total. It's not a lot, but evidently, you want to have the best control possible within your boot. So, I would always recommend custom insoles anyway, because I think you're going to get a better contact, within your boots. But doing both at the same time is good. And then just to clarify, so then you've got an app on your phone. When I used it, you're getting audio feedback the whole time. So I had headphones plugged in most of the time. So I would ski a number of turns, recording. And then as soon as I've stopped, I'd get that feedback straight away. So if you have headphones, you don't need to get your phone out. You could just have it, I guess, on speaker, which I didn't do. But that's how you're getting your immediate feedback on what's going on.
Exactly, yeah. So in the app, the actual experience is all about giving you the information that you need to know how well you're skiing, and then what you need to do to improve your skiing. So every time you ski any kind of series of turns and then you stop, so that could be a full run into the lift, or it could just be halfway down the slope. We look at those turns and we say, how good were those turns? So we then essentially compare, run our analysis where we compare to all different levels of skiers, and we say what level you're skiing at, and we give you a ski IQ. So that's our kind of number which represents your skiing ability. Average is about 100 across any skier, and then the very best instructors can get sort of 150, 160. We even see sometimes, and so that score gives you kind of idea of like how well you did. And then we also, when you're on the lift, we give you a tip. So the idea of the tip is that we look at what you've done and we say, okay, how can we improve your ski IQ? Where's the low-hanging fruit that we can give you a small intervention that you can try and focus on for that next run? Just maybe it's edge angle, maybe it's putting more pressure on your outside ski. What can we tell you that we think statistically is going to help you the most? And then you hear that on the lift, and then you focus on it on the next run, and then hopefully you make progress on it and you increase your ski IQ.
Yeah, I mean, it's really good. The different metrics that are focused on within there. You mentioned edge angle. So you've fed this data through, looking at some of the best skiers, instructors. You can see what represents the best skiing. And I found this really interesting when I was trying it. What is the best skiing? I think I ski pretty well, but a lot of the time maybe I'm a bit untidy. I could certainly make it better. And so those key metrics that you pick out, edge angle, edge similarity, and pressure smoothness. For me, it was edge similarity. The message I was getting the whole time was, keep your shins parallel to
Parallel,
each
yeah.
other. And when I started focusing on that, my ski IQ started going up, and I was thinking, wow, I'm actually improving here on the basis of this audio badgering me the whole time.
Yeah, exactly. That's exactly how the system works. So we take all that data from the sensors, and then we've come up with about 30 metrics. We don't show them all to you. And these 30 metrics essentially characterize your skiing. So we've talked about some of them already. For instance, what's the average edge angle you're getting? What's the ratio between the inside and the outside pressure under your feet? Are your skis tilting together? So we call that edge similarity. Is your edging smooth, or is it kind of jerky? Is your pressure smooth? Do you kind of push pressure on and then release it? Where you balance on the ski? Are you and how do you move through the turn? Are you very static in the turn? You're just going to stay on the back, or do you kind of come forward as you should do to try and get the edges in, and then come back as towards the end of the turn? And so these 30 metrics we developed with instructors, and then we check to understand that metric really relates to good and bad skiing. So if we get an idea but we can't really see its corresponding, instructors are doing well at it and the average skier isn't, then we actually think, okay, this probably isn't what we're looking for. But these are the individual elements that we've come up, and that's how we drive the whole coaching system.
And I mentioned before the Carv has recorded over 150 million turns. The number's probably higher since I read that, but that is big data. When people talk about big data, that's where you're accumulating all of this information on what you should be targeting, right?
Yeah, exactly. So we have an incredible I'm just checking now. So right now it's 348 million turns. So live off the press. So we have a huge data set, and that whenever we think about how people, so we really can characterize how people ski, and not just the very best people. We can characterize all those different levels of skier and think, what is it? Where's the intervention to help you get to the next level? And based on previous skiers that we've seen, where is that next step for you?
Then you talk about the ski IQ that you get. I found that I'm going to put my hand up. I'm quite a competitive person, I kind of do running and triathlon and all sorts of things, and I want to do, well when I can. And you start using the Carv, and you get given a score, and I want to do better. And what's really cool about it within the app is you not only see your score and how you're improving, but the gamification side of things in there is brilliant. I love the way that you can look at the leaderboard, and you can look at the leaderboard for the planet, for globally, or you can drill it down to a country, or you can drill it down to a resort, and whether you look at it all year or last month or last day, until you find out a way that you can get to the top of that leaderboard, by making it as fine as possible. But that gamification, that side of things, it really makes it engaging, I think.
Yeah, exactly. So when we think about how can we create the most powerful experience to get you better at skiing and having more fun, the natural place to look is the world of gamification. And it's sometimes a bit funny, but often in Carv we think about companies such as Duolingo, and so they have a language learning app, and they use all these gaming techniques like points and levels, and actually they have leaderboards as well, and we try and sort of think, these are very powerful motivational parts of their products that actually really do result in you learning the language better and quicker, and having more fun in the process. And so really, that's what we try and do. We try and think, okay, so gamification kind of serves two purposes. One, it makes it more fun as you play the game, but in the act of making it more fun, it keeps you in the system, and it means that you push yourself harder than you would do normally, and you actually improve more. So that, it's kind of like this double kind of whammy of, it makes it more fun, but actually that means that you in itself, but actually that pushes you to improve even more and get actually more from the sport, as well as just having fun playing the game of Carv.
Yeah, well, it certainly worked for me. So, who would you say the target audience would be?
Yeah, no. So Carv is a combination of an upfront cost for the hardware and then also an annual subscription for the software, so that we can keep on improving the algorithms and the coaching that we give to our customers. The hardware itself is £200 in the UK, and then the software is £179 a year for as many ski days as you want. We also offer a service for if you're only skiing a week or two. So if you're only skiing a week, there's a subscription of £79, which gives you 6 days skiing.
You mentioned that 90%, 96% of people have stopped taking lessons after they've become beginners. I think if you try and put that in context of, what a lesson would cost, and with this you can choose whatever time to do it, whatever time of day or wherever location you are. But who would you say is your target audience then for the Carv?
So really the target audience is anyone who wants to improve their skiing, with the one very important exception of we don't really serve beginners properly. And that's because when you're really beginning and you're in your first few days of skiing, it's really important that you learn all the basics and the safety aspects of skiing. So once you're comfortable on the slopes, you've got past the fear of essentially being on your own. And this is typically when most people stop taking lessons, unfortunately. So they get comfortable, they go through those initial lessons in the first 1 or 2 weeks, probably even one. And then they kind of go out on their own and they try and teach themselves. And it really starts from there. So anyone that's sort of going and thinking I really want to kind of be a bit better this season, want to actually improve my technique, all the way up to ski instructors and even racing professionals. So we have a lot of instructors on the system. I think it's about 10% of our customers are actually instructors. And so it kind of goes from that whole range. And what's interesting, we often find that most of these people, most people on our user base have actually stopped taking lessons. So over 70% of people, even before they got Carv, hadn't taken lessons in over a year. So we really think we're kind of serving this kind of 95% of people who still want to improve, but they aren't actually taking lessons. And so Carv gives them another option that fits easily into their skiing.
Yeah, and I think a point that I would make about it is that evidently, if you're working with an instructor, let's say on a one-to-one basis, they can give you feedback on the spot. But this is a extremely different level of detail. There's no comparison at all with group lessons, because there are benefits to group lessons, but I think once you get to a certain level, you need to have something with a little bit more nuance and a little bit more detail than that, and you can't get any more detail than the detail that you get with Carv. And I think that we talk about that target audience, the type of people who are interested in the data side of things. There's probably loads of people listening to this right now who have an app that measures the distance they ski or the speed that they ski, and focus on those metrics that don't really tell you anything about how good a skier you are. So there's that side of things. I got another question for you in relation to that. Can you, if you don't own your own boots, but you'd like to have a Carv, could you just slot it into hire boots?
Yeah. So all you have to do is basically hire boots as you would normally, and then often the shop can help you do it, but it's essentially taking out the layer on the top and then putting in the unit. And because hire boots typically aren't that tight, it's never a problem for the fits.
Okay, and in terms of instructors, I wondered whether instructors might kind of see this as a threat. But you mentioned already, 10% of the customer base are instructors. I mentioned, David Lindsay, who's incorporating it into, their lessons. Have you had that kind of feedback from instructors at all? Are they looking at, how they can use it?
Yeah, I think it's really complementary, because, even if people are having lessons from time to time, they're still spending most of their time on their own. And when they're on their own, they're thinking about what the instructor told them and they're trying to improve on it. And if the instructor can say, actually, I want you to focus on one of these Carv metrics, then they have all these great touch points between their lessons where they can keep focusing and keep working what the instructor told them. And then when they meet the instructor again, they can say, hey, this is what I've been working on. And there's so many aspects of the wider kind of knowledge about skiing and off-piste, route picking, and these nuances that instructors can give you that we don't try and compete with Carv. Really, what we're trying to do is focus on once you have an understanding of what you want to work on, we can basically keep you focused on that. And so so that's why we're seeing a lot of instructors sort of come out and actually use Carv in their lessons, and it's great because they get to keep a connection with the customer as well. So they might use Carv in their lessons, and then the customer can keep working on perhaps a concept that was brought up in the lessons, and then the instructor can keep that relationship. Whereas normally they might kind of lose the relationship after the lesson. There's still a touch point they can keep leaning on.
Cool. And you mentioned off-piste there. Evidently, a lot of those things that you're talking about, edge angle, edge similarity, etc., they're really only metrics they're going to work on piste. Is there a way of developing the algorithms there for off-piste?
Yeah, so I'm very glad you asked that, because this season we're actually releasing essentially analysis of your off-piste skiing. And so the way we do that is, yes, as you say, Carv was initially developed for on-piste skiing. And that means that when previous to this launch is coming out in 2 weeks' time, previous to that launch, if you were skiing off-piste, you would typically get a lower score. So, maybe your ski IQ is 130 on-piste, and then you'll go off-piste and you might get 100 or 110. Carv is still very good at measuring what your skiing is doing. It just wasn't really calibrated for off-piste skiing. And so what we've done this year is we've introduced essentially a modification, like a fix to that, so that when you're off-piste, essentially Carv recognizes you're off-piste and gives and adjusts your ski IQ accordingly. And so that means that now you can basically, it won't give you the same level of feedback as we give on-piste, but it will give you a ski IQ score that's adjusted for your off-piste skiing.
And is it doing that? Is it identifying you as being off-piste because of the GPS within the phone? So it identifies if you're going down specific runs in a resort, so it'll be able to identify if you're out of bounds, let's say, out of that area.
So it's a bit more interesting than that. So the way it works is it's so we had this insane data set of 348 million turns, and most of those are on piste, but a good chunk of them are off piste, and we can see that they're off piste. And so what we did is we basically used a machine learning model where we said, looking at the way your skis are moving, identify the type of snow that you're on, identify the difficulty of that snow. And so that means that rather than just sort of have knowledge of your specific resort or where exactly you're skiing, it's a lot to do with the way that your skis are moving and the way that you're skiing. So if you imagine when you're off piste, it's a very different way that your skis move relative to each other and the way the frequencies that they exhibit. And so essentially what the machine learning algorithm does is it looks to determine if you're on and off piste. And what's nice about that is it means that, say you have loads of snow on piste, it's basically like you're skiing off piste, but you're actually physically on the piste. So that means that the algorithm basically recognizes that you're in soft snow and you're in deep snow, and will switch into essentially the off-piste scoring system and recognize that when it gives you a ski IQ, recognize that you're off-piste, or even though you're technically geographically on the piste.
That's really interesting that you're developing that, because predominantly, I'm not going to say I predominantly ski off-piste, but I do quite a reasonable amount of ski touring and things like that. So last year when I tested the Carv, I kind of had to wait until my family holiday when we were just on-piste, broadly speaking, the whole time, and then I got to use it. And that was the kids got a little bit bored with me going, "Oh, I've got my score up to 140, it's up to 145, or whatever it was." But generally when I'm out and skiing on my own, quite a lot of that might be off the regular area. So I'll definitely be testing that this winter. So that sounds like a really interesting development for this season. Have you got, obviously you're working on that data the whole time, and are you always looking at ways to fine tune the system? Is there anything else lined up?
Yes, we've got some really exciting developments this season, and longer term, we're obviously always looking to improve and always thinking about how things are working for our customers so we can make it even better. One of the really exciting features that I think is really going to be a game changer this season is our new active coaching mode. So this mode basically means that you can get, it's a bit like you're getting real-time feedback as you can do now in certain modes, but the selection is all done dynamically, so that as you're skiing, you can just naturally ski without having to touch your phone or choose a different mode, and it'll always pick the best thing for you to work on right then, and then guide you to work on that specific part of skiing. And so, for instance, you might go skiing for a few runs, and then you'll hear, active coaching mode that's focused on edge angle if you've got it selected. And then for the next few runs, you'll get feedback on your edge angle and tips to improve and to try and make that kind of increment increase of your actual edge angle. And then once you've made progress on that, then you can switch to another part of your skiing. And what's nice about it is it's all dynamically changing based on the runs and the conditions that you have that day.
Well, that's something else I can look forward to as well. I guess what I'd really like to say is congratulations, because in a relatively short space of time, I think we're going to say it's like 9 years this winter. You've developed something that was just an idea based on an instinct. I guess you felt there was a gap in the market here, putting a poster up on the wall in Imperial. And now, down the track, you've got 348 million turns worth of data, and a company, a multi-million dollar company, and it's I know the ownership is probably spread out amongst a lot of different investors, but as far as I'm concerned, it sounds like a British company. So congratulations, Jamie, on all of that. Well done.
Oh yeah, thank you so much. And it's such a privilege to be able to sort of ski around and to have people come up to me when I see my Carv jacket and talk about some kind of breakthrough they had. And it's pretty cool now because it's getting to the stage where it pretty much happens every ski trip I'm on. And so yeah, very excited to sort of keep having more and more of an impact in the industry.
Cool. Well, that's brilliant. And thanks very much for giving up your time today. I'm just going to move to the close now. If you do like the podcast, there are 3 things you can do to help us. You can review us on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. Helps listeners find us. You can subscribe so you don't miss an episode. And you can book your ski hire with Intersport Rent using the code SKIPODCAST or taking the link in the show notes. And there are now 193 episodes of the Ski Podcast to catch up with. I had a quick look earlier. 134 of those were listened to in the last week. And that's probably a reason. I also looked at our data. Our listens are up 30% year on year. About 60% of you listeners are in the UK, 40% in the rest of the world. So thank you to everyone who has joined us. There is so much to listen to in our back catalogue. Just go along to the skipodcast.com and have a little search around the tags, and you're bound to find something of interest to you. You can follow me at Skipedia and the podcast at Ski Podcast. But for now, I would like to thank Intersport for sponsoring the show and thank my guest today, Jamie. Thanks very much for your time.
Thank you very much.
And finally, listener, thank you for joining us. And until next time, goodbye.